Okay, guys. So thank you everyone for joining me for this class. If you have any questions while we're doing stuff, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat. But today we're going to be, doing gardening one-on-one, but specifically we're going to be talking about planning your vegetable garden. So thank you to Better Space for allowing me to do this class for you guys. They're the ones that put this together. So thank you to them so much. So the first thing that we want to talk about, just going to take the video off. Sorry, Diane. We're just going to just keep it here for now. Maybe at the end we could show our faces and talk a little bit more. So the first thing that we are going to be going through is the location. So this is something that is really important, right? Because like once you get a lot of things in that location, depending on your hardscape, it's essentially hard to kind of pick that up and move it somewhere else, right? So you want to pick a location that firstly has full sun. So you want to, if you can, try to position your garden at the north, no, the south facing side of your home, and you'll get a little bit more sun on the east and west, and then the north facing side you get the most shade. So just, if you're not sure, pull up Google Maps and that will tell you the directions. I'm not a very good directions person. It's okay. I had to ask my husband, which side of the house has the most sunlight. So I ended up actually having to put my garden in the north facing side of my house, which is fine. It's completely open, so it gets a good amount of sun. One thing you can change is you can add shade by whatever contraption or depending on the height of something that you are growing, but you can never add sun. So that's why it's more important to find somewhere that gives you a full sun. You could work with that more than anything. And then after you pick that area, you want to take a look around and see if there's any really large trees, right? Because those trees will essentially start to cast shade on your garden, or those large trees comes with large roots. And when they had the large roots and you put a vegetable garden close by, those trees are going to be like, oh, yum, yum, yum. There's fertilizers, there's water, there's all that good stuff. I need that for me. And because their root system is so much larger and bigger and stronger, they're going to essentially take all of that away from your garden. So you want to avoid the trees for the shade, and also because they will rob nutrients from your plants. And then another thing is check the area when you have heavy rains, or if you've been in that area a while, like which part of your yard tend to, hold that water. So you don't want to put your garden there, because what will happen is if it's not a good draining area, that whatever you plant sometimes will just wash away, or all that water building up, your plant will just succumb to that and they will not be happy. No one wants to sit in a bunch of water for the entire time that they're trying to grow. So we are going to try to avoid any area that doesn't have good drainage. And then after that, if you check the sunlight, if you check for trees, check for drainage, the other thing that could cause an issue is if the area is getting a bunch of wind, right? So if the wind comes through from this direction and your garden is here, it will just knock everything down, especially if you have like tall things like tomatoes or okras. Okras are like good. They have like a very intense root system and they could kind of hold themselves up through a lot of stuff. But tomatoes, just anything that is growing upwards, you don't want the wind hitting that really good corn, even. So you just want to be mindful of that as well. Um, in the beginning, I did tell you guys, if you have any questions as I'm going through things, feel free to just leave them down in the chat. Sometimes I go really quickly and I'm in my own world. So just stop me, leave a question, and I'll try to make sure that I answer that for you. So as far as location, that's covered. We're avoiding wind. we're avoiding shade, and we are avoiding areas that doesn't have good drainage. Then we're going to be thinking about our placements of our beds, right? This is really important because sometimes, some of us have bigger spaces than others, and you don't want to put your beds too far away from your house. Just like if anything, if it takes too much, if it becomes inconvenient, you're not going to want to go out there and maintain the garden, because first and foremost, your garden is going to need maintenance. So you want to think about, where can I put it that it's still easy to access and it's not going to be too much for me to really go out there and take care of it. So you want to think about things being closer to the house, or maybe some things that don't need your attention as much. They could be further back. So that comes into our next part, which is the pathway. So whenever we are doing our garden beds, we want to think about not only the width of the garden beds, which I would tell you, I know they say keep it about 4 feet wide, but my garden beds are 3 feet wide, and I find that that is like the perfect width for your garden bed. You can make them as long as you want, no fuss about that. But when it comes to the width, the 3 feet with my arms, I'm about 5'7.5" on a good day, and I'm okay with just stretching all the way across my garden bed, which makes it really convenient for weeding or harvesting. I don't have to then get up and go around to the other side, which I feel like that 4 feet width allows you to have to do all of that. So if you're doing, if you're thinking about how wide your bed should be, try to do 3 feet. And then for your pathways, try to also do about 3 feet. If you are going through with a wheelbarrow, you want to be, not having to squeeze yourself together to get through, or if you're pulling through your soil or your any amendments, your cow manure, that's like one of my favorites. I love to use black cow. It's gotten really expensive over the couple years or so, but that's one of the things. So I like to just pull my soil amendments in, or if you're using a cart like a Gorilla cart, you want to make sure that you have that space. So I feel like that 3 feet, so 3 feet all around has been really good for me. I know I'm saying that to you guys, but my garden, and at some point I'll show you guys that, or if you check out my YouTube channel, you'll be able to see it. But my space is about 1.5 feet, right? And don't judge me, but it's for a good reason, right? I have multiple access points. It's fairly small, so it's not, I don't need to really pull in anything through that pathway. I could just pick it up and bring it there. So that's something to also consider. So consider whether or not you're going to be needing to pull a wheelbarrow through, or if you could just pick it up and bring it, or sometimes I just chuck it. So that's something to consider. And that allowed me to have more garden beds, which was my main focus. So the next thing we want to talk about, which I love so much, is vertical interest, right? This allows you to free up some space on the ground. If you grow like squash or zucchini that will take over the whole corner of your bed. When you get to vertical interest, you could kind of tie up those things, have them out of the way a little bit, and then that frees up a little bit more space for you to plant maybe some root vegetables or something that needs to grow taller as well. Just think about having some arbors or some I'm sorry, guys, some A-frame trellis, or you could even have some, what is it called again? Some obelisk is really nice addition. And it just gives your garden like this whimsical or just a visual interest. Even if something is not growing in there, if you have some structures in there, that could look really beautiful. Even in the winter time, just having that out there is really nice. So think about adding some of that in your garden as well. And then coming onto the trellis, right? We could also think about where we're going to place some crops. So I know you guys maybe already have some ideas of what crops you want to add to your garden. So I would say go ahead and, make what I use is those dotted line paper, or you could use graph paper, and go ahead and sketch out your beds based on the size and the width, and start to place, different crops in those beds. Like just write it out, the variety or whatever you're thinking of planting. And then think about where in this garden can I add something to give me more space, right? So let's say we're going through a main pathway. This is where I would put the nice arbor. So that would be like really nice going through that at the beginning of your garden. And then right there, if I'm going to put the arbor there, then maybe I'll put something like some climbing beans, and or sometimes I like to do like two for one. So I'll do a edible and then I'll do a flowers. I'm just so greedy. I just can't help myself. I like to plant a lot of things. So I will put a climbing bean, or they have a vine now for the black-eyed Susan. I don't remember exactly the name, but I have that planned where those are going to be growing together, and that will give you some nice color, and then you get some edibles as well. So that's just something fun. Like during the really cold winter time, my favorite thing to do is just go ahead with my graph paper or dotted paper, and I would just go over different variations of how I want to plant certain things. Sorry, plant certain things. Sometimes the plans change along the way, but that's totally fine. Even now, when I go out there, I'm like, yeah, I plan to do this, but then something else happens. So, just be open to the change and just have fun with it. Like, that's the best part, is just planning and, visualizing where you're going to put certain things. So, apart from crop placement, a main important thing for your garden is watering, right? So I still hand water most of my garden. Like I said, it's not too big, but it does get to be a lot in the, ending part of July and August because it's really, really hot. So I've been considering irrigation, right? So think about if you're able to really keep up with that watering, especially when you're planting a lot of things. And then also think about where is your water, like where's your spigot, right? If it's really far away from your garden, you may at this point, like the early stages is where you want to get those infrastructure in. So, digging up and putting in some pipes that are closer to the garden, it's the perfect time to do that when you are just starting out, versus you plant your garden, you get the stuff in, and then you're like, this is a lot, or uh I don't really want to do it. You don't want to get to that point. So think about how you're going to water your garden, and then how you're also going to harvest from your garden. So I keep things that I use a lot more. I keep them on my deck. So I have a in-ground garden with like raised beds, and then I have some things called green stalks. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but green stalks, sorry guys. Okay. So green stalks are a type of vertical planters, and it allows you to plant a multitude of things in just, I think, a square foot of space. So this is what I was saying, where when you go vertical, you could have more. And so I put things like my herbs, my greens, things that I really like. As I'm cooking, I'm able to go outside quickly, grab those things, and go back inside instead of having to lug through. I mean, it's not that far, but instead of having to go through and, go to the end of my yard, which is like 20 feet. I'm just so dramatic, and pick the herbs down there. I just try to keep the things that I'm using more often towards the front part of the garden or on the deck if possible. Green stalks are also really good for strawberries, so I keep the strawberries there, and then my daughters will come and they'll pick strawberries, and that just but yes. And then another thing is something that I feel like people can forget, but when you're going into that planning and you're thinking about veggies and all that stuff, which is great, do not forget the fruit trees. I don't know if you guys are interested in fruit trees or not, but I put at least 15 or so fruit trees in between 2020 and now. I'm still putting in fruit trees. They say you want to, as soon as you think about putting fruit trees in your garden, you want to put it in at that time because, our vegetables you could harvest in like 30 days sometimes, something 60 days, but for fruit trees, it's going to take you like 2 to 3 years, right? Berries are a little bit better. If you buy berries and you get like maybe a 2-year-old berry bush, you could get berries that same year. But for fruit trees, you're gonna wanna put that in as soon as you think about it. So those nectarines, those cherries, those apples, and maybe I'll go deeper into those and give you some selection of that. If you guys are interested in that, let me know. And I will put together some varieties that I think would work really well. But if you're putting in fruit trees, or if you're thinking about fruit trees, go ahead and purchase those. My favorite place to purchase from is Starkboroughs, and they give you a ton of information. And just my thing is, if we're not going to touch on it anymore, I just want to say just look at when you're supposed to harvest it. So if you're going to get a pear, some things are self-pollinating where you could have it on its own, but it's always recommended that you get two different varieties. But I would recommend that just look at the harvest period, like June. Some harvest is June, some is July. I would get two and then get them where they harvest in different months so that you are getting crops for June and then for July, right? So it's all about planning and making sure that these things are giving you fruit at different periods. And if you plan it well enough, you could have fruit all the way up to October, November. So that's one of my favorite things. I'm always encouraging people to add some fruit trees. And if you're unsure, email me, IrieGardeners@gmail.com. And, I'm a geek about gardening. So ask me all the questions and I will give you and tell you all the knowledge that I know. Just ask me anything about gardening and I will just geek out. Also, I start seeds, like I'm starting to garden from December. So I'm starting seeds indoors from sometimes end of November, December, all the way till now. I'm always doing seeds. I'm always, as something comes out, something is going in. I'm just having that garden work for me, especially nowadays. I feel like, it's very important to grow your own food. There's a little bit of lack of nutrition value in a lot of things, and it's just not the same, especially with tomatoes. It's just not the same as a homegrown tomatoes. But something that I realized is I need to get a greenhouse, right? This is a structure, and there's different types. There's like smaller ones, and you could have like a whole. The sky's the limit with greenhouses. Essentially, it's just about what's your budget, because when you're starting seeds indoors, no matter what light system you use, that electricity bill is going to go sky high. So if you are thinking about seed starting, I would recommend getting maybe, starting small at first. Those plastic greenhouses on Amazon. I use one that I use for hardening off my seedlings. Or you could use something as big as, I've seen people use old windows and build a greenhouse. But it will be really helpful if you end up going further into gardening and starting your own seeds. And we'll get into seeds in the next class. But that would be something that I would kind of think about as I'm planning my garden, because the greenhouse, you don't want it to be in full sun. You want it to be in part shade because that closed environment could get really, really hot and that could kill all your seedlings. So just think about all these structures that you want to add around your garden. And I know people say start small, and I'm going to say yes, but I think you should just plan to your heart's desire. Go on Pinterest. Pinterest is my fave. I pin so much things for gardening. So, dream up as big as you want, but which is what I did. But I would say start with one bed at a time, right? So that way, if something changes or if you can't manage all of it, especially if you're just starting out, build up one bed, see how that goes, and build it in a way that it still looks beautiful, but there's added components that you're going to add afterwards. That way you still are able to do exactly what you want to do. Because a lot of times, sometimes, like I do is sometimes I kind of hold back on what I want. And then later on, I'm like, oh, I should have done that. And we don't want to go in with any regret. So I would just say plan as big as you want and then just go at two beds, one bed at a time, and then each season add another bed of your dream garden. Add two more beds. That way, when you're starting, you're not getting too overwhelmed. You're not putting too much on your plate because the last thing you want is to be overwhelmed. And then you say, ugh, I don't want to garden anymore. And I really want everybody to continue to garden because it's just such a valuable hobby and it brings so much value, not only to our mental health, but also to our internal body. So I don't want you guys to get overwhelmed, but dream big and then do one or two beds at a time. And then think about if you're going to compost. And I know this is like a lot of overwhelming stuff. I'm talking about greenhouse, I'm talking about, composting, fruit trees. But with everything, you could just take it a little bit at a time, right? And I just want you to think about if you're going to be doing it. And then if you're going to be doing it, where would you do it, right? You don't necessarily have to do it this year. You don't have to do it at all. But I just want you to have that thought in mind because, like I say, we want to essentially just not be dependent on anything, right? So if we're able to compost in our own garden, if we are able to get fertilizer from that compost and put it back in our garden, that mitigates a lot of issues that I see people going through, which is sometimes they buy some soil or some manure or something and they bring it into their garden and then it just destroys everything, right? So we just want to be able to be pretty self-sufficient when it comes to gardening. And it doesn't have to be intense. It doesn't have to be a three structure garden like compost system. I really just have um, four poles, some hardware cloth around that, and I just dump stuff in it. Have I turned it? No. Will I get compost in a couple months? No. But it's a place that I know that maybe at the end of the season, I'll be able to get some good fertilizer just coming from my house waste and also get those green leaves that, not green leaves, those brown leaves that are falling in, the fall season, pile those up in there as well because during the garden seasons we get the nitrogen, not so much the carbon. So get yourself a nice pile, go to the neighbor, ask them for their leaves, just make sure they're not using any harmful things in their lawn, and that should be good. And then after that, the fun stuff, right? We think about like the whimsical stuff, the signs, the chimes, the bird feeders, things like that. Just add a fountain maybe, you could put that in your gardening plan. So I think I have covered a lot of things. I want to give you guys time to ask any questions. I don't want to keep yapping, even though I can. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. If you want me to unmute you, you want to come up and ask a question on video, also let me know. Okay, where's a good place to just start? Okay, a good place to just start is get yourself a pot. Okay, a small patio. And I'm going to go into that in the following classes. I'm not good with memory as to which exact class, but I will be going into a small patio. I would say just get a pot, right? Get a pot. Don't even start from seed, get a start from the garden center. If you're close by, come get a start from me and just grow that one thing, right? Or there's raised beds that you could put on your patio that has some legs on it and put some herbs in that and just just start with herbs or a tomato. Tomato is always a good place to start. Peppers can be a little finicky. Um, but yeah, some herbs and some tomatoes are good places to start. Just get it from the store and just see how you like it. Just see how you like it. Um, let's see. What do you recommend for natural pest control? Okay, we're going to be definitely get into pest control. It depends on the pest though. So that's the little issue there. My main pests in my garden, because it could also be, is it an animal pest? Is it just like, something small that's on the leaf? So it all depends. If it's an animal pest, I use the have a heart cage. I have groundhogs all over here. I use the have a heart cage. There's a lot of non-toxic organic pest control things that you could use. Um, if you want to tell me specifically, maybe I'll know off the top of my head. Let's see. Recommendations for growing fruit trees in pots. Okay. So fruit trees in pots, you just want to make sure that you have a large enough pot and you want to get a dwarf variety. So, and there's also like smaller ones than a dwarf. They'll have that for like peaches and plums. Yeah, but you just want to make sure that you get, I would say like a 30, 40 gallon container in a dwarf tree, and you could go ahead and grow that tree in a container. Just know that anything that you're growing in a container, they don't have access to all the microbes and the organic stuff in the soil, so you're going to have to feed that a lot more than you would if you had it in the ground. Okay, great. I got two pots and a raised bed. Woo, all right. All right. Can you use raised bed gardening for vegetables other than herb? Oh yeah, you could use it for whatever vegetables. It doesn't have to be herbs. You could use it for peppers. You could use it for just you essentially if it's going to just be in like a raised bed that is not by the ground or just on your patio, you just want to make sure that it's something that is deep enough for the root system, and we'll go into that. It's just some things need longer root system, especially if you're trying to grow root vegetables, like say carrot or something. Depending on the carrot variety, you'll need like 6 inches. Some needs 10 inches. It's all about just having that space for the root system. Let's see. Pests like Japanese beetles, aphids, cutworms. I would use, oh gosh, send me an email to IrieGardeners.com and I'm going to send you some links for those specific things. Something about me is I don't have like really good memory and I don't want to tell you the wrong thing to get. So send me an email and I will have some organic pest control for you to use. I know off the top of my head, is it the Japanese beetles? That they have this trap at Home Depot. It's like a yellow bag that they're attracted to. I don't know if I'm messing up the different pests. But yeah, send me an email. Are 5 gallon buckets okay to grow veggies like squash, peppers, and okras? Yes, I have grown. In fact, I've grown two peppers together in a 5 gallon because peppers actually like to lean on each other. They're like a little companion. So you can grow two peppers in a 5 gallon. As far as squash, yes, but you're going to be needing to feed it a lot more. Okras, yes, as well. Just one. One of the okras, one of the squash. But if you can get the squash and the okra a 10 gallon, that would be even better. Peppers, you could put two in that 5 gallon container. I want to get my toddler involved, so I was thinking tomatoes, peppers, herbs, and cucumbers. Any recs for good veggies, plants to plant now that she'll be able to enjoy over the summer. She's 3, and I'm trying to get her excited. Oh, yes. Good veggies and plants to plant now. It all depends on where you are. So send me I don't know if you know your zone, because you can be like, for example, I'm in New Jersey, Teaneck, but there's like 7 different zones in New Jersey, and I don't want to give you bad recommendation. Our last frost date here is like April 7th. Um, I don't know when yours is. Just check for your last frost date. Once your last frost date is passed, you could plant. You could plant anything. My girls really love the strawberry plants. I would recommend you getting the bare roots from Stark Bros. Plant those, and she'll be in heaven. I highly recommend service berry trees. Beautiful, and the berries are great for birds. Does it leave a mess? Because that's something I'm always a little worried about. Thank you. Okay, carrots never work for me. Big leaf top, and then I pull it up, and the whole carrots are so tiny. So that means the carrots probably had too much nitrogen, so it's probably growing a lot of leafy growth. I'm keeping you guys a little longer. I'm so sorry. I'm thankful for, wait, I tried winter sowing for the first time. Sage is about 2 to 3 inches tall. Do I untape the milk jug now or wait until I put it in its forever pot? You could wait. If it's not getting too big and taking over that jug, you could just wait until you're ready. I would say just put a little fertilizer, maybe some granular fertilizer if it's going to be a while. That way it has some nutrients while it's waiting. Oh, LA. Oh, I'm not familiar. You should, I feel like that's a warm climate all throughout. So I think you should be fine. I think you should be fine. So plant whatever you want. Hi, I planted in all containers and put basil plant and marigold plants and chives in with tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and had no pests. I wouldn't believe how well they're. Yeah, so that's companion planting, and we're going to get into that as well. So that's another natural pest. But with the marigold, it has to be a specific marigold variety that actually helps with pest control, and it has to be very close to the plant. I'm going to do the same thing else. Come on, thank you. Okay, let's see. Can I grow corn in a 5 or 7? Yes, you can. You can do that. Keep them nice, maybe about 4 inches apart if you can, and that way they're able to the tassel when they flow, it will pollinate the kernels, and you should get some good corn. Apparently, pests don't enjoy these smells. Yes, no pest with service. No mess with service. Oh, good to know. Good to know. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, so that is going to be it. If there's no more questions, thank you guys so much for joining me for this class. Thank you again to Better Spaces for sponsoring this. My next class will be April 7th. I believe I'll be covering more of the beds and containers and all that good stuff. So I hope you guys are able to join me for that one. Think you can't wait for the next class. All right, so I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Bye.